Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming at you again. It's Monday morning around 9:37. Coming live at you again from Film Fanatic headquarters. So I hope everyone's doing good. Thanks again to all the fine folks on the World Wide Web who've been checking out this channel. It's been really cool. I got a couple more videos that I had posted the last few days or so that just kind of got in the thousands range, or 1,000 views range, and been getting a lot of subscribers the last few days, so it's been really cool. And again, I love when people are commenting on a lot of these videos. That's really awesome. That's what this channel's all about, is covering some movies that people might not have ever seen or might have heard about, and maybe some viewers out there that actually like this crap that I post. They're discovering these movies for the first time, and I'm doing that too. I'm really doing, well, my whole exploration around this whole world of exploitation is pretty different now. I'm really seeking out and checking out new films all the time that I've been buying that I haven't seen, and it's been just awesome. I've been so incredibly surprised and blown away by the quality of some of these movies I've been getting. I've been getting movies more. I started buying more movies within the last few months or so. Since around Thanksgiving till about now, and here we are. It's in mid-January or late January. I've been buying more Blu-rays at a much more frequent basis. I used to always kind of space it out, and I still do, as far as my, when I would go to Bull Moose, typically that's where I go for the new Blu-ray releases that I buy. All the Grindhouse movies, they have an amazing selection. And then usually when I still buy regular DVDs occasionally. VHS, I don't really buy anymore. I've been tempted to buy VHS, but not really, because I'm really seeking out those movies that I love on VHS. I'm trying to, really seek those out. And if they come up when I'm shopping, putting my money and my energy into buying them on Blu-ray. And I used to go, my regular habits were always, and I should say too, with my Blu-ray collection. It's funny. I have two different hats. I'm not super. I mean, we're all creatures of habit. I'm definitely a creature of habit. I work better when I'm in if I don't have a schedule around things. With maybe a job or rehearsals or something that's kind of fixed, and I have a routine. If I don't really have that kind of routine, my general everyday life kind of descends into chaos. I'm I can lose track of time. I get very disoriented. But the more that I have some kind of a schedule, meaning that where I have a somewhat regimented day of, maybe I have a rehearsal on a particular night, or I have a lesson to teach, or I'm going to work, or blah blah blah, but I have a set thing that I'm doing. When I'm in that space, it's usually, I find it's way more productive for me, because I have to try to utilize my time a little bit more and try to keep focused on particular things. Whereas if I don't really have that kind of a schedule, and everything is just kind of up in the air, and there isn't a schedule, and it's all by all by the seat of my pants, I tend to like, my focus is all over the place, and I don't really get that much work done that because there's a lot of work that I need to do all the time. So when I don't have that, which is probably the case for a lot of people out there, but when I don't have that, I tend not to have the focus that I need. I'm kind of a lazy person a lot of the times, and I think for some reason when I have that kind of schedule or like a fixed thing, it like sets me in a mode of like trying to prioritize things. So it usually helps. And when I would go to Bull Moose, and I've done that for quite a while, especially the last few years, I and especially now it's even more of a thing. Bull Moose has a massive, massive selection, particularly the one in Waterville. They probably have the biggest movie selection that I've ever seen. The other one that's really, really good, it might actually be even bigger. I think it actually is bigger, is the one in South Portland, the Bull Moose in South Portland. That one I don't get to because I'm never down in that area that far, and it's a little bit. It's a drive. I mean, it's from here in Northport. It's a little over 2 hours. So very rarely. I've only been to that shop twice. The last time I was down there, it was on New Year's Eve, or New Year's Day, I should say. I went there on New Year's Day, and I had gone down on New Year's Eve to stay and hang out with some friends on New Year's Eve. And on New Year's Day, they were actually open, and that store was literally like 5 minutes away from where we were staying or so. And that place is just massive, like outrageous. It's kind of like it's set up like a big giant kind of factory. I wish it was closer, but the place I usually always go to, I go to the other locations. Like I go to the one in Brunswick, which is really great. That was my last when I went and bought some movies. I bought some a new batch of movies on Friday because I was down. I had to go down to Portland on Friday morning, and on the way back, I go through Brunswick. That's one of the ways you can go back. So I stopped there and had gotten some movies there. And that place is pretty small, but they have a really great movie selection as well as a music selection. But their movie selection, for it being a smaller place, it's really, really good. My favorite place is still the one in Waterville. That one is just massive. But usually I have it's kind of a rule, I guess. It's kind of a rule that I have for myself, where when I go there now and I'm buying movies, and I buy, I sometimes I buy some books, I buy a lot of music at that one, and I, scan the various aisles and different things that they have there. But what I try to do there is I try to always focus on buying uh, anything and everything related to the exploitation world, uh, because, again, I've said many, many times, I love all styles of film. There's many directors I love, multiple genres that I kind of all love at once. But at the end of the day, I just have a thing and a deep affinity for horror and science fiction, and in particular the exploitation world. So I've been that's usually what I do. I don't really check out the other sections. It's kind of funny when it comes to films. They have a lot of the commercial films. They have like regular, action movies, or like big budget action movies, or like new releases. Mystery films. They have a really massive documentary selection. And eventually, I'll like scout out those areas. But generally, when I go there, I'm hell bent on picking out some real like underground gems. And so as far as movies go, that's usually what I do, and that's usually what I focus on. I try to find either certain films that I really love that I've seen, maybe it's been years, and then I go by certain directors that I really love, and then a lot of the times I just take a chance, throw some caution in the wind, check out the prices on certain movies. And most of the time now I just buy things I've never seen before. And the other big thing that helps with my decision making when I'm there is going, checking out who the companies are, like Severin or Blue Underground, Synapse, Vinegar Syndrome. Those are all like really great companies. In particular, lately, Mondo Macabro. Lately, I've been really focusing on buying a lot of titles from Severin and Mondo Macabro. Those are just incredible. Severin is probably overall the best company out there just because of the sheer quality of their packages. And the prices are really good. The prices are really reasonable. Mondo Macabro is just incredible. They have the cheapest of all of the films that I come across, and they really, really specialize in, just an incredible assortment of all of these bizarre exploitation films. And I just bought two new titles from Mondo Macabro, which I'm really excited about talking about. And I just watched one of them last night, so stay tuned for that. That movie was just insane. And again, it was a movie I've never seen, but I really love that company. They put out I feel like out of all of the companies out there, they all have their things of where they specialize in taking like a deep dive in the world of exploitation. But there's something about Mondo Macabro where they go even further down that dark rabbit hole, and they seem to specialize even more in pure obscurity, and that's my jam. I just love it, and I have a bunch of Mondo Macabro labels. The best thing too is for their prices. The prices of their DVDs is just incredible. They're super cheap. None of them are like $20. Like they're all like 14, $15. Occasionally there's one that's in 20 something bucks, but 20 something dollars, but generally they're really cheap. But they all come, totally remastered, with the picture and the audio, soundtracks. They all have like great special features, and it's just great. And the fact that these movies are so obscure, it blows my mind. And they get this royal treatment. And Severin does the same thing. They tend to really up the ante with the packaging, the artwork, the special features, bonus discs, soundtracks. Just incredible. I did a show the other day on one. I just bought a movie collection and it was by this director. And again, that's the thing that I've been enjoying the most lately is I've been discovering all of these filmmakers and films that I've never heard of before. And just recently, I did a show on Dracula vs. Frankenstein, which was directed by Adamson in 1971. And I was just completely blown away by this film. I had never heard of Adamson before. I just totally took a chance. It was a title I came across a few times, and I didn't buy it the first time I saw it. Then the next time I was there, at the shop, it was in Brunswick. I went ahead and I bought it because I'm like, I gotta have this. And I realized it had two movies on the disc, and plus it came with the soundtrack for Dracula vs. Frankenstein. And just blown away. And so Severin really does that kind of a thing of where they really give you the maximum bang for your buck. I find, and again, there's so many great companies. So when I go to Bull Moose, that's usually what I have in mind, and that's kind of my agenda as far as buying films. When I go to Goodwill, which I go to quite a bit, I go to the Goodwill. There's two Goodwill locations here by my place. There's one in Belfast and there's one in Rockland. The one in Belfast is pretty decent, but the one in Rockland is awesome. I buy lots of Blu-rays there, they're all like typically they're all used and they're super cheap, like $4, $5 sometimes. And I when I go there, I tend to buy, and they don't really have you know a selection for like say the grindhouse kind of thing, of course, which is not surprising. But they have, I've like for instance, I have most of the Marvel movies now on Blu-ray. I'm a huge fan of those films, and I they tend to have all kinds of commercial big budget films there on Blu-ray. But I've really beefed up my whole like superhero collection on Blu-ray through them, and I've bought a bunch of other ones. But so typically when I go there, I buy those Blu-rays for the more I guess you want to call it the more highbrow Hollywood movies. So I go so I wear two different hats when I go shopping. It sounds kind of funny and eccentric, but that's what I do. And they're both like their styles of filmmaking that are worlds apart, but I think they're all related. And again, we all have certain styles or certain things that we all kind of naturally as fans of media. There's all like there's always that thing of like there's a certain style or something we always maybe gravitate towards the most. But at the same time, trying to always check out other things and have a pretty wide have a pretty wide range of different things that you love. So that's how I am. So I usually, when I go to Bull Moose, I put on a certain hat, and when I go to Goodwill, I wear a certain hat, and that's usually what I do. And it's a cool balance of like you know two completely different styles of genres and films that I deeply love. But at the end of the day, the exploitation world is my favorite. And so I did a show on Dracula versus Frankenstein. I had never seen that film, and that was this guy here. And I completely blown away by it. It was just like, just uh, amazing. I was blown away, and I can't wait to watch it again. Watch it again. It's easily now on my top five lists or in my top 10 list if there was such a thing as far as like favorite movies of all time. uh, Dracula versus Frankenstein 1971 by Adamson, just amazing. It just so schlocky and so cheesy and so terrible, but yet so raw, so uh, such an incredible atmosphere, amazing music, great practical effects. Uh, it's just it's totally bizarre. Also, you kind of after watching both of these films, which is the next movie I'm talking about is the other movie that came on this package, and that's this guy here, Brain of Blood, Adamson. Both of these films have this weird thing where you feel like you might have like you took some mushrooms or some acid when you watch these. Like they have that super drug fueled kind of vibe, and it's just so awesome. They have a very psychedelic kind of element to them too. And the thing that I love about Dracula vs Frankenstein is that those are two of my favorite iconic monsters, universal monsters, and to see them put in this kind of context of where it's like just this super cheesy, super raw, and grimy, exploitation kind of setting and environment is just like amazing to me. And I have to say, there's so many great vampire movies. There's so many great adaptations of Dracula. There's a few, not as many, but there's definitely quite a few great renditions of Frankenstein that do exist as far as films. But I don't know, and it's a tough thing to say, but I kind of feel like Dracula vs Frankenstein from 1971, directed by Adamson, might be my favorite version of seeing both of these monsters in a movie together. It's just amazing. So again, like I just discovered Adamson, like literally a couple days ago. I posted a little video um, about Dracula versus Frankenstein. Well, I said, I just did a show on my channel, on this channel, about this movie, and I posted. I've been posting it around, and then last night I watched the other disc, the bonus movie, Brain of Blood, which also came out in 1971, and I posted a little photo of me watching the movie, which was kind of funny, and I had a couple of friends talk or chime in and say, "Hey, this is a great, this is an awesome movie," and they had commented that they were, they're fans of his work, Adamson, and that they've known about him for a long time and they've seen a bunch of his movies. And I had said I never heard of him before. I just discovered him, and that's part of the magic of this whole like kind of excursion, is that I'm just discovering these filmmakers. And then when I did the show the other day on Dracula versus Frankenstein, I did a little bit of research before I did the video, and I looked him up, and I'm just like, holy crap! Like he's got so many movies. Like, and I went through all the titles of all the movies he did, and just I was just blown away. I'm like, I want every one of these. Like, this is amazing. And Brain of Blood is no exception. This movie is completely bonkers crazy. Like, it's totally nuts. It's a hard movie to describe. The basic story, I mean, the best way to do it is just, I guess, to read it. Amir, the benevolent ruler of Khalid, is dying, but there is hope. Freshly deceased, he is flown to the United States, where Dr. Trenton transplants his brain into the body of a simpleton, and a classic assistant got the wrong kind of idea, or assistant got the wrong kind of body plot line. Frankenstein. Dr. Trenton has a few nefarious plot twists on his own in his mind. And then there's the thing with the dwarf and the women chained in the basement. It's up to Amir's friend Bob and wife Tracy to try and salvage this tale. Like, totally bonkers. The monster in this, where Amir becomes, basically has this brain transplant. And he's like this revered, like, religious and political leader who dies, and who is in charge of this like Middle Eastern country, Khalid. And he's like looked at as like a presidential figure, a king more or less, the ruler, and he's looked at as like almost like a spiritual leader. So his men try to save his life after he dies, and so they meet this doctor who basically says he can complete this brain transplant, and it's totally insane. And things go awry, and he comes back, but he comes back as this monster, and the makeup that he has is just like completely absurd and ridiculous. Uh, just just totally nuts. And the guy, the actor who plays Frankenstein in Dracula vs. Frankenstein, plays Amir, which is so awesome. And I had no idea. And this came out in 1971, the same exact year that Dracula vs. Frankenstein came out. I mean, just amazing. Just amazing. And Amir, the character of Amir, is just staggering. And Amir's character is played by John Bloom, who played Frankenstein in this other film, Dracula vs. Frankenstein. And he's literally like this giant. He's like over 7 feet tall. He's so menacing and so like intimidating and scary and kind of horrific. But then at the same time, he's incredible as Frankenstein. Like, just awesome. The makeup in that film is just so awesome. so terrible but so amazing at the same time. And Brain of Blood, he plays a mirror, and he's like the lead role, and it's incredible. Like he is on one side, on one part of the spectrum, or on one side of the way his character is, he's so scary and horrific and intimidating. But then the makeup that they use for him is so horribly cheesy that it's kind of laughable. Um, but it's amazing. It kind of reminds me, seeing him in the makeup. It reminds me of like this weird um, combination of the Toxic Avenger meets Jason Voorhees. Like when there are scenes with Jason Voorhees in the Friday the 13th movies when he doesn't have his hockey mask, and you see his face for like a brief second or for a few moments. That's kind of what he looks like. And the other thing that I wondered too was, I wonder if like he really reminds me of the Jason Voorhees character as far as like his mannerisms and the way he carries himself and even the way he looks. Kind of, and it's a weird stretch or a weird thing to say, but he really reminds me of that. It kind of reminds me particularly of when Ted White played Jason Voorhees in the Friday the 13th movies. He was in uh, chapter 4, the final chapter, or chapter 3. And Ted White's my favorite Jason Voorhees. And that came out in the mid 80s. And I kind of wonder, like, did Sean Cunningham see this totally weird, bizarre movie and, like, get ideas and how to kind of craft the look of Jason Voorhees? Like, kind of strange, kind of weird. Maybe that did happen. But that was what, when he first appears as a mirror, when he comes back with this, like, new body, that was the first thing I thought. And the other thing that's so funny about that was the same thing happened when I watched Dracula vs. Frankenstein with Frankenstein's character. When I watched that movie and Frankenstein's character appears in the story, and he's actually in the movie quite a bit. I started thinking, wow, like he really reminds me of Leatherface from Texas Chainsaw Massacre. There was a lot of like weird similarities. Again, the same thing with a lot of the same mannerisms that Gunnar Hansen used, who played Leatherface in the original Texas. I started thinking, wow, like there's like all of these weird similarities with that, like because he's this large guy and he's like really frightening, but he's like really clumsy, and he's like he kind of emits all of these different emotions of where he's like terrifying, but then he's like really vulnerable, and he's like kind of this little child at the same time. Yeah, just bizarre. And I wonder, maybe, I mean, it's definitely a strong possibility, but I wonder if these two films, were seen. It would be interesting to find out if that was the thing. But I wonder, after watching both of these films, if like at one point when Toby Hooper was putting together Texas Chainsaw Massacre, if he saw this, if he saw Dracula vs. Frankenstein, and based a little bit, based some of the idea and concept around Leatherface and like kind of the design and just his character, if he had saw Dracula vs. Frankenstein and based it off of the Frankenstein character, and used it as an influence or an inspiration. Like I'm curious about that. And then the same thing with thinking, it caused me to think, well, maybe Sean Cunningham saw Brain of Blood. Because it predated that movie by quite a bit, especially Friday the 13th. That came out in 1980, so quite a few years before. This came out in 71. And I've been thinking, well, maybe Sean Cunningham saw Brain of Blood, and when he was designing kind of the idea of Jason Voorhees, and especially in the later films, did he see Brain of Blood and was inspired by Amir's character. You know, it's really strange. And then, of course, like with Dracula versus Frankenstein, both these movies came out in '71, which is nuts. But then, you know, Texas, the original Texas came out in '74, so that's a strong possibility, you know. But that was the thing that took. I mean, I took a lot away from both of these movies and just thoroughly enjoyed them. But those were the two things that just jumped out at me about those weird parallels between Leatherface and Jason Voorhees. Pretty strange. But Brain of Blood is just, oh god, it's so bizarre. And again, both of these movies, and especially Brain of Blood, it probably even more so. It feels like you've taken a tab of acid when you watch it because the story is so bonkers, and at times it doesn't make sense, and then it does. But it's just so bizarre. It's so bizarre, and the way it's shot, the music, everything is just incredible. I mean, it's a total deep dive into the world of exploitation. I mean, just so thoroughly entertaining, so cheesy, so bizarre, and yet hilarious at the same time. I have a friend who I play gigs with every now and then, Andre Lescus. He's an amazing guitar player. He lived in Nashville for a long time, and now he moved back here to Maine recently, which has been really cool. And he was telling me, I was talking to him one day about a lot of the times with being a musician and people who are trying to make a living with music, in music, it can be obviously pretty tough. So a lot of times we all have to have like little part-time jobs or other odd jobs to kind of get us through financially. And I was talking to Andre about that, because I know he was working for a little while in this wood shop. But he says now what he does is he's been selling. There's a guy he knows who's a lawyer, and this guy acquired this massive book collection, so he's been selling all these books for this guy. And I'm like, wow, like that sounds super interesting. And he showed me a bunch of the photos of the books that he's been selling, and they're all like these collector editions of all of these various books, and they're all like this. They're all like these pulp, like science fiction and horror books, and they're basically like, you know, uh, exploitation stories. Like really, there's a lot of giallo inspired books that I came across that he was selling. They all have like, there's always the sexual component. There's the sci-fi and the horror element is super over the top. There's like the covers are just amazing. You know, just like this. And I'm like, this is exactly. And I remember he said to me, I think you would probably like a lot of these books. And I'm like, yeah, this is exactly the films that I buy. This is exactly where it's from, that same exact world. And I'm like, that's crazy. And he was saying how he has sold a few books for like hundreds of dollars. Like there's apparently a big market for it, and that's how I feel about the whole exploitation world. Is it's just it's super entertaining. To me, it's the epitome of why I love films, because it's like pure, unadulterated escapism. And Brain of Blood is no exception. Uh, just tremendous. And again, I'd never seen this before. It's got all of the elements that I love about these films. I'm super excited to watch it again. The other thing being that I just got turned on to Adamson as a director, and I checked out a lot of the films that he's done, or have been checking out, and I bought these two. Uh, I'm really, next time I go to the shop to buy some movies, I'm gonna really look for anything with his name on it, because just tremendous. The other thing too with this package, like I said before, it comes with both of these movies, and each movie has like hours of special features. Like it's just amazing, just awesome. And and I wonder too, like, you know, what do when I think that how what year these movies came out? Like both of these came out in '71, and I know Dracula vs Frankenstein was a pretty big hit. I think Brain of Blood was definitely successful, but not as successful as Dracula vs Frankenstein. And I wonder, like wow, what if these movies came out now? I wonder what that would be like. Being that they have no budget, there is that thing that's happening or has been happening lately, where there is to a degree as far as newer films. There's kind of a resurgence or a little bit of a retro thing going on, where a lot of people are making movies on video, like the whole like shot on video thing is definitely part of the whole exploitation world, and there's a lot of movies being made in that world, now, and those are great. I did a review on one of those films a while back called Suburban Sasquatch, which is totally like it's like 10 or 11 years old now, but it's totally like a modern day exploitation movie, uh, and it's all shot on video, and it's like just god awful, but just totally amazing at the same time. And there's a whole scene of a whole bunch of film directors making movies in that genre now, which is just crazy. And I have seen other films that, or heard about other films that have been coming out that have, you know, kind of that harken back to this period, the whole exploitation world, and where everything was just super schlocky and ridiculous. But I think that the one of the biggest differences now, you know, with say if you're a guy or a girl now and you have the desire to be a filmmaker and to actually put together a film and to get things going, it's probably because of technology and with like all these great cameras. Just the other day, well, when we played our show the other night with Quantum and Method for Madness, Spencer, who has the band Method for Madness, he brought this camera, and it was a 4K camera, which is like basically the best camera you can own. He bought a 4K camera, and it was this little camera for $200. And I'm like, that's insane. Like 4K is the highest resolution that you can possibly get. He bought this little handheld camera that he brought it to the show, and his girlfriend did some filming. And I'm like, that's crazy. So inexpensive, so cheap, but yet the quality is just ridiculous. And I know there's been a lot of films lately that have been shot like through Zoom. There's one really terrific horror movie that came out a few years ago called Host, which is actually really good. Super uber low budget, shot for nothing. And it was shot all through Zoom. It was shot during the lockdown, during the pandemic, but it's a really good horror movie. And, with a little cast of actors, a lot of the actors didn't have very much experience, if any, but very effective movie, and all practical effects were used. And it made quite a bit of money, and it's actually a really good movie. And so there's a handful of movies, and there's also a handful of movies that have come out that are trying to really emulate the whole exploitation world, as far as shooting it on film, having that real grady kind of quality to the actual film, intentionally trying to shoot it for as little money as they can, and all those kinds of things, and having the real sleazy kind of factor to it. But from a technical side, I think now if you want to make a movie, distribution's different. I think it was a lot easier back then during the time of like when say Brain of Blood came out. A lot of filmmakers, like from a lot of the information and a lot of my research that I've been doing and checking out about the history of all of these films and these styles, distribution seemed like it came pretty easy for a lot of these films, as far as like getting your film that was maybe made for like a few $1,000 even, and getting it picked up by various companies in Europe and also in America. especially in European markets, getting it picked up by a few companies or one particular company, and getting a pretty decent distribution deal seemed really easy, and they were able to get some profits that would come in, and they would have a lot of their films. A lot of the times it would, you know, these companies would keep, even if it was like even a small movie, it would keep it in some kind of circulation at like say 10 or 20 different theaters, and it was able to make a little bit of money from that. But there it was, from what I gather, like back then during the period of like the late 60s or mid 60s, but late 60s through the 70s and right up until like 87, 86. During that whole period, which was the biggest explosion of all things exploitation, it seemed like from what I gather and like from what I've read and what in a lot of documentaries I've watched about that period, the distribution part came pretty easy for a lot of filmmakers. Really interesting. I think now it's opposite. I kind of think it's opposite now as far as distribution. I think now for films to get a good distribution in theaters for like independent films is next to impossible. It's very hard to get that. But on the other side of things, which I think is a bonus of say the technology that we have, is that you can still get your movie viewed or seen by lots of people through various social media platforms. So it's got that. But then I also think on the technical side of things, as far as actually shooting a movie with all the technology we have, I think in that regard, it's probably a lot easier to do that today. I remember seeing an interview with Joe Bob Briggs, and he was saying how he was just blown away. Joe Bob Briggs is like, kind of the, um, one of the most, probably the biggest, expert or specialist when it comes to uh, the world of horror exploitation. I mean, he's just amazing, and he's made a life and a career out of talking about a lot of these bizarre films and in a lot of cases reintroducing a lot of these films to the public. But I remember seeing an interview with him, and he was saying how because of how where technology is, and that you can like buy a 4K camera for $200, he was amazed that there's not more movies being made. He feels like that's not really happening compared to like that golden era of exploitation, where there was literally thousands and thousands of movies coming out every year from all parts of the world. And he was, I remember him saying he was kind of mystified and dumbfounded why that's not happening more. So it is interesting. One example of a film that's come out that is definitely super low budget and it's made an incredible profit is Terrifier 2. Not a huge fan of the first one, but it still has that same trajectory as far as being super underground, essentially crowdfunded by fans, made for nothing, and it's made millions of dollars in the box office. Pretty miraculous. Um, but as far as films, newer films that are kind of emulating that exploitation kind of vibe, it's funny because the one difference too, I think there is that like a lot of these filmmakers, like Herschel Gordon Lewis and Bill Luswig and James Franco and uh, Lucio Fulci, all of these guys, they were really uh, limited to financially. Like they just didn't have that option as to how far, as to how much they could put on the screen as far as putting their money into certain things, and things were rushed because they didn't have the budget a lot of the time. So they worked fast, and they got really efficient at that, but they had extreme limitations when it came to the financial aspect to actually make their films. Shoestring budgets, essentially. But within those parameters, they utilized every minute of what they did. And so that's a big difference. I think now it would be different because technology is so cheap. You still need to get things financed, but I think from a technological standpoint, it's way cheaper now. So it's an interesting kind of thing. And they were, these exploitation directors were doing it not because it was, quote unquote cool or, kind of trendy. They did it because that's just how things were back then. Like there was no real other way for them to function because they were all functioning in this like underground world, and it was always completely apart from any kind of Hollywood system, and none of the stuff that they were doing or producing or writing or directing would have ever met or would have ever been able to been in that kind of Hollywood light anyway. So they were essentially all like kind of underground punk rock filmmakers in a lot of ways, doing something completely outside of like the social norm or what like was socially acceptable. So yeah, from a technological standpoint, things are better, or there's more options, and it's cheaper. So I don't know, it's interesting, but I highly recommend Brain of Blood. It's just an astounding movie. Just again, both of these movies have just completely blown me away. I can't say enough. And the other thing that's so awesome is Zandor Volkov, who plays Dracula in Dracula vs. Frankenstein, plays Muhammad, who is Amir's like his like soldier. He's the guy who's trying to save Amir's life when he is basically on his deathbed. And he's amazing. Like I didn't even recognize him in the film. But Brain of Blood, like, just amazing. This is one of the best packages I've gotten in quite some time. Just two amazing, mind blowing exploitation movies right here. So this is Jason Dean. So thanks again for checking out this channel, and we will see you next time. Peace.